Coming up on Tech News Today, Microsoft pulls out of CES. We'll tell you how far. Also, Chinese hackers hit the Chamber of Commerce, and Irish regulators not smiling, but not exactly frowning over Facebook.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, December 21st, 2011. Tech News Today is brought to you by Ford, featuring voice-activated Sync App Link. Now you can control select smartphone apps with your voice, so you keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road. Check it out in the 2012 Ford Fiesta and at Ford.com/technology. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And joining us, Editor-in-Chief of Engadget, Mr. Tim Stevens, back on the show. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good to have you here. Big news breaking this morning. Microsoft announced that 2012 CES, that's the one coming right up after
Just
the
a few
first of the
weeks
year, is the last CES where it will have a major presence. No more booth, no more keynotes.
There'll still be reps there for meetings, and there's also the partnerships, right? So if Microsoft's working with Intel on something, you'll probably see a little Microsoft sticker on it, or if they have some kind of other ridiculous initiative like the UMPC, which we hope they don't, but if they do, you'll see their partners there.
But that's, I mean, it's, for all intents and purposes, they pretty much are going to be no-shows. Right now, Microsoft has the booth. It's like the big booth in the big room with all the lights and all the people hanging out.
It's right there at that connection point to the Central Hall, between the South Hall and the Central Hall.
Right.
You walk through Microsoft. Well, you walk through Intel too, but you have to walk through Microsoft.
And
it's
then
huge.
there's the keynote where everyone hopes that Ballmer will say something crazy.
Right,
you know,
Bill
and
Gates
get a lot
did
of
it for years before him.
But I don't know. I feel like without Microsoft, I mean, Microsoft hasn't really been the big draw for me the last few years at CES. Maybe it makes sense that they don't come and be lackluster.
What's confused me is in the past couple of years, Microsoft, I mean, this is a consumer electronics show, and Microsoft makes like one consumer electronics device, and that's the 360. Sure, they power a lot of different devices, but they can't really sell you on anything or show you like brand new products, because when they showed off like the HP Slate, that never came out, or did come out eventually in some kind of variant form. But it's hard for Microsoft to have the ability to go, check this product out. We have this thing. It's just, they only have one right now. I mean, it used to be the Zune. Now they have the 360, and they probably will use the 360 for E3 or other gaming expos.
So yeah, I think we'll see Microsoft stepping forward in more areas. I mean, certainly they're going to be talking about bringing Windows 8 onto more devices and trying to tie their tablet scheme together this year. But certainly Microsoft has plenty of opportunities throughout the year to talk about this stuff. Like you just said, E3 is a big one for them on the gaming front, and they've got their own events to talk about Windows 8 and tablets and phones. So I think for them, the CES just doesn't have as much importance as it used to, and it's certainly not enough importance to justify what must be a massive expense for them. And there's also the timing of CES. I mean, January has always been a bit of a weird time to have a major consumer electronics event like this. It's right after the holidays, right after the biggest shopping time of the year, and so you're really looking at long-term devices. And maybe Microsoft wants to have a little bit less lead time between announcements of devices and shipping devices.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of reasons touted as why Microsoft would do this. One is that the show has shifted away from the kinds of things that Microsoft does as much. It's more about accessories. It's more about phones. And not that Microsoft isn't fully into Windows Phone, but it's shifted a bit away from the computer space and the enterprise space for sure that Microsoft inhabits. The other thing is Apple has never gone to CES, and Apple pulled out of Macworld. So this seems to be a trend. Do you think that this is because the internet gives you a captive audience? You can, they're not captive, it's actually the opposite, but it gives you direct connection to an audience so that you don't have to rely on a big show that CNN might be coming to cover and you can stick yourself in front of them. You can just go and make your announcement, and everyone live blogs and everybody talks about it, and you make a bigger splash that way.
Well, if Microsoft wants to put together their own Microsoft branded show, nobody else, at whatever time of year makes more sense for them than January, that doesn't seem to be working out so well, then all the attention's on them anyway, rather than a blurb and a headline about Microsoft and IBM and HP and everybody else.
I mean,
they certainly have events like Mix that they could spin into bigger things if they wanted to as well, and they can basically just step away from all the noise that is CES and own the message and basically take over news for whatever period they decide to have this event in, and you know, own the story much more so than they can at CES.
Yeah, then Microsoft's shown that they're getting with it when it comes to, okay, we're going to disclose stuff. We have our own videos. We can control the atmosphere. That's the other thing. When they do those demos and the keynotes at CES, it's always like, oh, great, there's like 40 gremlins going on. Wi-Fi's not working. Bluetooth's not working. This isn't working. Versus in Microsoft's controlled experience, when they can show you things on their sites or on their own events with, like Tim was saying, there's a Mix, WinHack, Build. And there's all kinds of things that they can control. CES isn't as fitting for Microsoft as it once was.
The Consumer Electronics Association has put out a statement where they wish Microsoft well. Microsoft is a member of the CEA. It's not very bitter, except for that one paragraph right before the end where they're like, we got plenty of people interested in their exhibit space, let me tell you. There's no shortage of people.
Who gets it, I wonder?
That's a good question.
Who's the next
Should we place bets?
Cool spot? Let's place bets. I say Samsung.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Samsung wants to, well, Samsung's in the central hall already. They would give them forward space.
Yeah. They're not too far back now.
They would move up. It's probably likely that somebody who's in the back of the central hall has the budget to move forward into a better space. Although NVIDIA, I believe NVIDIA is in the south hall.
You think they would move right next to Intel?
They could. Well,
I mean,
that's
Intel and
interesting.
Microsoft, they're always located right next to each other.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so that'd be really funny. It's either NVIDIA or AMD just kind of hanging out going, hey, we're over here too. We got nice carpets. And
I would be surprised if we see a car manufacturer step up. Audi had a pretty big booth last year, and if you go to a car show, Audi's booth at the Geneva show last year was as big as a football stadium. So they've got the money to make something happen. I wouldn't be surprised. And maybe Engadget will step up next year. We've got a booth on the floor this year. Maybe we'll go a little bit bigger next year.
Ooh. Well, CEA says that you get to choose your space for the next show during this show. So you better get in line, Tim.
All right, I'll get my ticket this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to Chinese hackers targeting the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. According to Wall Street Journal report, a group of hackers in China breached the computer defenses of America's top business lobbying group and gained access to everything stored on its system, including information about its 3 million members. Chamber officials say the internal investigators found evidence that hackers had focused on 4 chamber employees who worked on Asia policy, and that 6 weeks of their email had been stolen.
I'm just laughing because I'm sure the policy says, don't let this stuff get stolen by the Chinese government or the Chinese group. We don't know if it's government or not. But, oh boy, it just seems like I never know what to say with these kinds of stories because it's a constant, like, back and forth kind of secret war that's going on.
Well, these situations keep arising. The U.S. says the people that we've tied it to have ties with the Chinese government. So this has to be some sort of a, maybe not state-run operation, but that they know about it. And China keeps saying, no, we have no idea what's going on, and it's very irresponsible of you to be pointing the finger at us. How do we get past this? I mean...
Well, Sarah, we first need to fix the copyright problem. Okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the
China
fast track
attacking
test.
the Chamber of Commerce, that's an issue. But we need to force SOPA through before we can focus on something like this.
I guess that's true.
Actually,
Very fair and balanced, Tom.
Thank you. Richard Clark pointed out in a column that the U.S. doesn't have a strategy to stop Chinese cyber assaults on anything except its own networks. Rather than, they don't defend American companies right now. They employ a cyber offense strategy, not a cyber defense strategy. Well, and that's a considered decision. It's not incompetence. They've decided that that's the best way to respond. Richard Clark says that needs to change.
Well, if SOPA can effectively destroy the internet for the United States, you can't attack these network devices, right? So I think maybe the Congress is not something.
Tim, do you think that the strategy needs to change?
I don't know what to think. I mean, like you, yes, I'm a little bit confused as to how exactly to handle these sorts of situations. I mean, it's definitely a scary situation. I don't really know what we can do in terms of strategy. But like Sir was saying, I'm not sure exactly what we need to do in terms of response either. I feel like we need to find a way to maybe be tracking these a little bit better, maybe so we can catch somebody red-handed and maybe make some stronger retaliations in sort of these actions can maybe stop happening. I really don't know though. I mean, I don't know exactly who's at the root of this, and I just know that it's scary.
Yeah, and it is something that is going to have to be addressed one way or another, whether it's through defense policy or whether it's through some kind of private organization. You know, it's an ongoing thing. It's not like it hasn't been known for a long time. This is just the latest example of something happening along the way. Meanwhile, Dealbook reporting that Yahoo is considering selling off its Asian assets, like Alibaba Group. They own a large percentage of the Alibaba Group to the majority owners. Yahoo would move approximately $17 billion in assets by selling stock at $14 per share. Yahoo would still hold on to about 15% of Alibaba, according to Dealbook's sources. SoftBank, Alibaba's SoftBank with private equity partners are ready to bid for the entirety of Yahoo, too. So there's a possibility that this is part of a little strategy dance over the acquisition of Yahoo. Remember, Alibaba has not signed the NDA, so they haven't been able to go into the direct negotiations with Jerry Yang. Yang wants to limit how much of Yahoo an equity partner gets so that they can maintain control of the company.
Yeah, so the thing is, if Yahoo rejects it, that's when these companies are willing to try to buy all of Yahoo. I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing, because over at Fortune, Dan Primack did some math, and he's like, Yahoo's entire valuation, market cap, is about $18 billion. If you transfer $17 billion out, is Yahoo just a $1 billion company? And they have $2 billion in cash sitting around, so that means they have negative assets or something like that. So it's kind of an odd concept if Yahoo was to do this. But, I mean, if they want to have some kind of, I guess, to be nimble, maybe dumping these assets over to Alibaba and SoftBank would free them up to have some kind of focus, because right now they're still lacking that.
ATD's Kara Swisher, that's All Things D, says that Yahoo's board is targeting several candidates for its new CEO, including Hulu CEO Jason Kilar. I don't know if I were a CEO candidate, which I will never be, so this is purely speculation.
Oh, Tom, don't sell yourself short.
But I don't know.
You could do it.
You could dream big.
Yeah, probably.
Tom for Yahoo Prez.
Yeah, please don't. No, really.
All I need is the unicorn.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd be wanting to take Yahoo
You
right
Andreessen
now,
to this?
with all of this going on.
You're gonna pull the Mark Andreessen argument of, even if they did offer me the CEO position, I'm not taking it.
Well, Andreessen's exactly who I'm thinking of. He said, "Yeah, let's just be clear right now. I don't want this job.
I don't
Stop
know why Jason
me."
Kilar would either.
I know, exactly. That's what I mean.
It's new. It's exciting. It's figuring out its strategy right now. To go to Yahoo just sounds like a mess.
There's been a lot of talk that he might be on the outs at Hulu, actually, so maybe this could be somewhere for him to fall to at least. But yeah, it's hard to imagine wanting to step from somewhere successful and on the up and up, like you said, into somebody like Yahoo, which obviously has to go through some major reorganization to figure out exactly what they want to do. But yeah, maybe all it takes is the crummy Photoshop of a horn on his head, and maybe that'll be good enough.
Kilar and Hulu have had to fight like tooth and nail with the networks and the studios to get the content onto Hulu, even though those partners, they're partners in Hulu, which is kind of a strange thing. They have arm's length negotiations and an ownership interest, but like Hulu keeps losing content every now and then. Viacom pulls stuff, or if a News Corp does it with their FX series. Maybe, I mean, Kilar is just sick of this kind of behavior. I mean, if he can deal with difficult people, running Yahoo should be pretty easy.
That's a fair point.
I don't know. I still think Yahoo sounds like a really big task.
I don't want to give away one of my predictions for the prediction show that will be running during the holiday week, but it will have something to do with nothing changing. That's right. That pretty much gives it away. All right, let's take a quick break and thank our sponsor. This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Ford. One of the great parts of Ford Sync is AppLink. We recently took the Sync AppLink feature for a test drive. Check it out.
Hey, Tom Merritt here, taking off from the TWiT Brick House, and we're going to jump into the 2012 Ford Fiesta to try out Sync AppLink. Now, Sync AppLink lets you use apps like Pandora with simple voice commands, so you keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. All right, so we're going to see how Pandora works with Sync. Plug in the phone here by USB, and then we're going to say...
Line in. Please say a command.
Mobile apps.
Mobile apps, please say a command.
Pandora. Now it immediately goes right to the channel that I had, which was a classical music channel. I don't really feel like that right now, so let's change that. Play station Uncle Tupelo radio. There we go, that's better. All right, let's hit the road. And you can do all kinds of things with voice commands. You can bookmark a song, thumbs up, thumbs down, create a new channel from an artist while it's playing. All those things you probably shouldn't do while you're driving if you're doing them by the app, but you can do them safely by keeping your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. All right, we're here. So that's how Ford Sync with AppLink allows you to play Pandora with simple voice commands while you keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. Of course, it's available on the 2012 Ford Fiesta, and you can learn more at ford.com/technology.
Now, I swear there are sirens there, but they weren't coming for me. I thank Ford for their support of tech news today. Wall Street Journal reporting further details to what we talked about yesterday. We talked yesterday that Amazon had kicked the tires on RIM last summer for a possible acquisition, and then RIM said, please stop kicking our tires and go away. Microsoft and Nokia, according to Wall Street Journal, also interested in jointly bidding on RIM. So Nokia avoids a little antitrust heat there, probably not all of it, but going into a joint bid if that were the case. The state of these talks are not known at this time. When Reuters reported on Amazon, they said that talks were over as far as acquisition. They were still talking about partnerships. We don't know if Microsoft and Nokia are still chatting with RIM. We do know that Balsillie and Lazaridis have pretty much said we don't want to sell to anyone.
Right.
And the market has said, please, 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 sell to someone.
Please sell to somebody. Although if you read this Wall Street Journal article, they use words like casual and boardroom talks and maybe even a joke. I mean, it sounds like, hey, people toss around ideas all the time. Sometimes those ideas become public. Sure, maybe this was a conversation that was had for 10 minutes. Maybe it was actually a very serious conversation that was had during the summer where Microsoft and Nokia were trying to figure out, hey, does this make sense for us? Okay, it doesn't. Let's enter into a partnership together instead. But I don't know how much credence I give this.
It definitely sounds very wishy-washy to me, like there's not a lot here. And I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly what Microsoft and Nokia would do with RIM's. I mean, obviously they would want to try to consume RIM's position in the market and boost their own. But how exactly they would do that would be, to me, a very difficult thing. I mean, RIM has had so many issues lately in launching new product and launching new software. And I don't see that an acquisition here or even a partnership would turn that around very quickly. And honestly, you know, at this point, I'm not sure what's next for RIM. I mean, after BlackBerry World, when there was a lot of disappointment there, then the recent news that they won't really have a new operating system until the end of 2012. Yeah, I'm on the side of the investors in RIM. I think they need to get out of the business or do something, sell, or they need a new tact anyway.
I can see Microsoft taking over the software division of RIM and going, okay, look, they take care of all the enterprise stuff. We already have our own stuff. Let's just make them all work together. Now we own the enterprise. We're Microsoft. We have this end-to-end on the software side anyway. And Nokia would end up, I would imagine, taking over all those deals with RIM's manufacturers. Maybe they would just stick with the hardware, and maybe they would continue with BlackBerry. But Microsoft would be, they already had the deal for Windows Phone. Why not go, hey, those devices there, they can run Windows Phone as well. Or they'll work they'll be interoperable because at the end, our software will be able to control everything anyway, so don't worry about it because Microsoft and Nokia, they're buddies.
Yeah, certainly. That's basically what they've tried to do with Nokia in a lot of ways. But the transition from Nokia away from Symbian has been very difficult for them, and the transition of RIM away from the BlackBerry OS would be obviously very difficult as well. And there's a lot of overlap there between the enterprise server and Microsoft's own Exchange server, the functionality that you can do there. So I see there being a lot of overlap that, you know, could be great synchronicity between the two, or it could be just a lot of overlap between the two as well.
Either way you look at it, my predictions are going to involve a lot of nothing's going to change.
Okay.
I would agree.
Can't wait for Friday.
You're predicting the predictions.
Definitely agree.
Irish regulators, a few people in the chat room have been very excited, including Kevin Dublin, about this story. Irish regulators have ordered Facebook to boost privacy protections, although it's not an entirely negative story here. The regulators gave Facebook a passing grade when they assess their privacy and data protection. In order to satisfy the audit, though, the Office of Irish Data Protection Commissioner has asked them to create additional notifications explaining facial recognition photo tagging, reduced data logging and data retention for non-logged-in users, and warn users when their info is shared with third-party apps. This all needs to be done in time for the follow-up audit in July 2012.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that a lot of people may not know that Facebook's international headquarters are actually headquartered in Dublin.
I think I may have heard that once, but I'd entirely forgotten it.
Yeah, and it's not just European Facebook users. It's everybody in the world that's on Facebook is handled through this office if you're not in U.S. or Canada. So it's a very important place to be. And Deputy Irish Data Commissioner Gary Davis said it was the most comprehensive and detailed audit ever undertaken by that office. Back in October, 24-year-old law student named Max Schrems, you might have remembered, had asked Facebook to turn over some data it had stored. He looked at it. He got freaked out. He ended up filing 22 separate complaints with the DPC.
Shadow profiles!
Right, saying shadow profiles are being created. This is a really big deal. Turns out the DPC says, you know, we don't think Facebook is doing this. We think that they just need to ramp up their privacy controls a little bit, better inform users a little bit, and we're in good shape. The agreement that Facebook made with the FTC, bigger deal. 20 consecutive years of audits.
Yeah.
This is sort of just, hey, let's check back next summer. Make sure everybody's
how's
in good
your
shape.
July?
Right. Yeah, you good for July? And Mark Zuckerberg wrote the manifesto apologizing to everybody about privacy concerns in the FTC deal. This just seems like, it worked out well. Ireland seems to be happy. Facebook seems to be happy. They don't really have to do too much.
Tim, do you think it's unsettling to see governments poking in at this sort of stuff, or is it a good thing that they're looking out for our privacy?
It's always a little bit disconcerting when the government gets involved. I think we can all agree on that, because who knows exactly what the result's going to be. But ultimately, this is a very important issue that's a concern for a lot of people. So I think it's definitely good that the government here is getting involved and looking, because I think we all know that Facebook knows a ridiculous amount of information about us, but what we don't always know is what exactly Facebook is doing with it and how they're protecting that information. So long as we don't see any major crazy government restrictions or policies coming out of this, like SOPA, for example, I don't have a concern with them at least taking a look and seeing what Facebook is doing.
You're going to have to add SOPA to your drinking game, folks out there, just so you know. Every time one of us, or your cleaning game. I think the most important thing out of this story is that there are not shadow profiles, or at least it doesn't look like there, because that was a big deal. It's like Facebook has all this information on you, and I was thinking, well, it kind of makes sense that they would, but they shouldn't be making use of it, and that's what they found. They're not making use of it. That's the important thing, at least for now. Amazon updated the Kindle Fire software today, supposedly to enhance fluidity and performance, improve the touch navigation responsiveness, gives you the option to choose which items display on the carousel. We talked about this coming because it's very embarrassing when you go to the Gossip Girl site and then someone picks up your Kindle Fire and it's like, well, Tom is visiting the Gossip Girl site. And I'm like, no, I had handed it to someone else.
You should be prideful of your Gossip Girl.
But there are other reasons. Maybe you're shopping for a Christmas present.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, David Polk said the update does work as advertised. I haven't got mine yet. He still calls the reading experience an exercise in frustration. GigaOM noticed that the update gives users access to Google's Android market. No more redirects. So when you want to browse the Google Android market, you can. It's not going to force you to go to the Amazon market.
But that's all you can do, right?
Yeah, you can't install apps or anything like that. You can look at it.
You could sideload them, but yeah, you can't install them from the Android marketplace, correct. Wired says the update doesn't help the laggy browser, though. And it, of course, breaks root, which is going to happen a lot of times when you do that.
It's just strange. I mean, Amazon did say when they released the Kindle, or they were announcing it, that we aren't going to do that little cat and mouse game that Apple does. We're not going to try to, if you jailbreak it or root it, we're not going to try to stop that. But I don't know if this update needed to break root necessarily, or if it's just a side effect.
Well, saying we're not going to try a cat and mouse game is different than saying we're going to test to make sure we don't break root. I mean, they don't have to spend time making sure that the rooting works.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't it just a matter of installing when you're doing an update, well, no, maybe not. I was thinking if you're doing an update, you're kind of reinstalling a newer version of that OS, but it could be an incremental addition into it. A lot of times when you're rooting, you're actually kind of changing it a little bit. So if they're pushing out an update to it, it might need to root it in order for that update to gel with the rest of it.
The other thing I think is interesting, Amazon on the same day as upgrading the Kindle Fire updates its iOS app, adds in a PDF reader, adds in the ability to read all the magazines and newspapers that you get in the Kindle Fire. You can now read in iOS on an iPad. And print replica textbooks also available in the iPad. That's the ones where the layout stays the same the way it looks in print, but you can still highlight and make notes.
You can add notes and things like that. I love this. I think that this jives with how Amazon has presented itself as we're not wanting... of course, they want people to use the Kindle Fire, but if for whatever reason you're on iOS, we want the Kindle experience to be as pleasant as possible. Makes sense.
And that software update for the Fire, apparently there's all those weird momentum issues as you would flick. Apparently things would keep moving left to right constantly. That gets fixed. So that's more like the experience people have with that other, Apple tablet. I mean, that's the thing. When Apple's kind of set up a standard for how your touchscreen is supposed to operate, and a lot of phone companies have done the same thing. Motorola, those things work well. But for Amazon to make their Fire work as well as these other devices, that's still important to them, because when you play with an iPad and then you play with the Fire, they should kind of feel the same. That's what they want. I mean, and the fact that they have upgraded the apps to match, I think it's a good idea.
Tim, what do you think of this the strategy Amazon has to compete with themselves, essentially, upgrading an iOS app that competes directly with the Kindle Fire? It seems to be working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, they just want to sell content. So I don't think they care where you get it from. And if they can make their content more appealing on the iPad than on the Fire, I think they'd be happy to have you download it on the iPad instead. If anything, they probably would prefer you to download it on the iPad, because everything that we understand is that they're selling the Fire at a loss. So they might even be able to make more money off of you if you do it on the iPad. But I'm glad to see this update out there, and I'm glad to see that they've got more functionality on the iPad. But I'm very disappointed that the browsing speed hasn't improved. During the launch of the Fire, they said that the Silk browser would be much faster than anything else, and the demos they showed then made it look like it would be. Of course, when we did our review, we found that not to be the case. And Amazon at that point said that, well, when we get more people in the system to kind of churn through and build up the cache, things will speed up. But we haven't seen that yet. If anything, it seems to be getting slower. And I'm wondering if maybe this cloud-based rendering system that they've got isn't really built to handle the load that they're actually finding. I mean, they've said that this thing is more successful than they thought it would be. So maybe it's turning into more of a bottleneck than a speed boost.
Well, and if that's the case, a firmware update isn't going to fix it.
No,
not necessarily.
Not.
There could be things in the firmware that would fix it, but what's going to fix it is the Silk processing in the cloud working better, and I'm sure they're working on that. But yeah, I suspect you're right, Tim. This is a load-bearing issue. They weren't able to load test it with every Kindle Fire that's going to sell, not with the real-world behavior.
So what's a few more million data centers to scatter around the U.S. to make it work?
Good for the economy. Keep buying Kindle Fires. Use that Silk browser. Let's move on to the news piece. Verizon's LTE data service was disrupted last night, although voice calls, text messaging, and its 3G network were not affected. This is the second LTE outage for the company this month. This morning, Verizon issued a statement saying that LTE data service is returning to normal, but did not detail what the issue was that caused the outage.
Bradley Manning's defense has rested after calling a total of just 2 witnesses in his hearing. The witnesses served with Manning in Iraq, and one has said he wanted to be a good soldier. The prosecution called up to 21 witnesses in the same case.
Android head Andy Rubin says that Google activates over 700,000 Android devices every day. Now, that number sounds nuts, but Rubin explained that Google does not count resold devices. These are 700,000 unique devices per day that are sold and then put on a wireless network. So these are subscriptions.
These are either in the carrier's store, buying the phone and activating it there.
That's what he's saying.
It's not buying it unlocked overseas and popping a SIM card in it. That's crazy. That makes that number even more unbelievable. Yesterday, reports circulated that Sony apologized for PS Vita issues, according to a UK Sony rep. Those reports are incorrect. As we surmised on Tech News Today yesterday, a poorly translated apology for difficulty in reading tech support was misinterpreted by many as a general Vita apology. Remember, we said, well, it sounds like they're just apologizing for the phones being busy. The spokesperson from the UK also said that Sony has not seen the widespread Vita problem. So not only do they say, wait a minute, we're not apologizing, and there isn't a problem. You're all imagining it.
It's updated anyway. Here's new firmware, which they did.
MIT's Technology Review got its hands on Intel's Medfield-powered smartphone and tablet prototypes, both running Android. They say the phone could handle Blu-ray quality, video, and web browsing, was nice and smooth and fast. Tablet ran ice cream sandwich, was also pleasant. And Intel claims that its Medfield offers better performance and lower power consumption than the top 3 smartphones available today, which sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm no iPhone 4 user, but any similarity with this in an iPhone 4?
Well, it's a reference design, so theoretically people are supposed to just look at it as a model. Not like people look at the iPhone 4 and copy it or iPhone at all. That never happens.
That never happens.
It never happens
Look at
anywhere.
those 4 buttons. That doesn't look iPhone-y at all to me.
No, that's a Nexus.
And looks upside down, too. Look at that, right? It's up,
yeah, it's totally
so there you go.
It's an upside-down
right.
phone. It's
iPhone
totally
and Nexus had a love child.
Let's talk about a different phone manufacturer, Nokia. Nokia's upcoming Symbian Bell phones will actually be called Nokia Bell phones. The devices still run Symbian, but the name is now missing from Nokia's naming scheme. Nokia has pledged that the OS will be supported up to 2016, and the Bell update will be available in February of next year.
Now, I know Bell has an E, but can AT&T sue? Just wondering. RBC Capital Markets analyst Jonathan Atkins says if T-Mobile wants to bring its network up to par with other U.S. wireless carriers, it will cost $9 billion. Sure, the failed AT&T merger garnered Deutsche Telekom, T-Mobile's parent company, $3 billion in cash, but T-Mobile USA is not getting any of that money. DT begs that $3 billion goes on a horse race or something like that. They're paying off debt with that money. So T-Mobile's going to have to come up with $9 billion.
Sure, they're not
going
to gamble it on a horse race or like on bet it all on black and maybe then give money to
No, they're
T-Mobile?
paying off their gambling debt, previous gambling.
That's
debts.
the problem.
Yeah, no, they're not gambling debts.
Speaking of T-Mobile, the company has reported to Senator Al Franken that the company put Carrier IQ software on 9 models of phones, but that's just 450,000 handsets. Motorola also disclosed that the software was put on 4 of its phones at the request of AT&T and Sprint. Those phones are the Admiral, the Atrix, the Bravo, and the Titanium.
The Sunday Times reports Ireland's Office of the Data Protection Commissioner ordered the country's largest ISP, IRCOM, to dump its 3 strikes system targeted at booting illegal file sharers. IRCOM had come up with this 3 strike scheme after an agreement with several large music companies in 2009.
Man, that office in Ireland's busy these days.
They're really getting around.
Also, breaking news, I learned this on This Week on Google. The FTC has fined Santa Claus over violations of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act.
Under 13.
Mr. Claus flagrantly violated children's privacy, collecting their consumer preferences for toys and also tracking their behavior so as to judge and maintain a database of naughtiness and niceness.
This should have been a top story.
I thought on the gifts he actually had a EULA saying you were over the age of 13 if you opened this gift, right? Didn't you get on
I never saw that on any of my gifts, but you know.
It's on the wrapping paper, really small font.
Let's move on to the randomizer.
Randomizer.
So, ladies and gentlemen, The Hobbit is not only real, but there's a trailer out there. Dare we play it? Let's play it let's not play it full screen, shall we? Let's avoid that takedown notice.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the Hobbit features some of the character who played Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, as well as the guy who played Watson in Sherlock.
And this is your Christmas gift. We kept that in even though...
We had some randomizers to choose from.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, didn't they talk about this on Frame Rate? You said, no, they didn't.
It came out right after Frame Rate. We missed it yesterday.
Okay,
Now,
right.
we followed, back when I was at Buzz Out Loud, we followed the travails of The Hobbit, whether it was going to get made or not. Geeks are way into Lord of the Rings, and this looks like it just fits in so perfectly.
Yeah, it does.
With the Lord of the Rings. I'm excited about it. You guys not excited about it?
Oh, I'm very excited about it, but it's like when I see next December, I have a whole year. I'll get excited about it next September.
I'll say it. I'm not excited about it.
You're not?
No.
At all?
No.
Did you like Lord of the Rings?
I didn't watch it.
Why
Well,
are
that's
you
why.
sitting here?
I'm not a Wizards and Warriors geek. I'm like a sci-fi geek. I don't get into the elves and
You know,
dwarves
I'm not crazy
goblin
Fantasyland geek either.
That's the thing.
But
I somehow
Lord of the
Lord of the Rings
is
is
like
different.
the
I
best.
had to read The Hobbit for high school, and that's one of the reasons I didn't read Lord of the Rings. And I was just like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, sorry.
All right, let's move on.
All hate mail right
Let's
here.
just move on to the
Holiday season, though.
How do we deal with that? Tim, are you a Hobbit? We should have asked Tim. Tim, are you a Hobbit fan?
I am. In fact, I just picked up the Blu-ray set of all the extended edition movies. Right. So if I start watching now, I should get through just in time for December to watch The Hobbit.
These are the extended editions, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Let's check the calendar.
HP has posted a Pre-3 WebOS update 2.2.4 is being pushed out to European and U.S. pre-3s.
I had to stop and what is a pre-3? Is this before 3? And then I remember, oh right, the phone is called the Pre.
Yeah.
I'd almost forgotten.
The one you didn't pay for.
Yeah.
Tom Merritt. EA just put out almost.
Screw you, Sarah Lane.
Okay, I had to. You don't talk about the Pre very often,
I know.
It's just, once a year we can make the joke. EA just put out almost all of its iOS games on sale for 99 cents, including Trenches 2, Battlefield Bad Company 2, among others. Today is a big day for BlackBerry users. I've got some good news for you guys. Spotify comes to some GSM BlackBerry phones, and Angry Birds hits the playbook.
Playbook is official. It's got Angry Birds.
Right.
It's a real tablet.
Now you can finally use it.
It just grew up.
It's got Angry Birds.
The Nook had it first. It beat the playbook.
Finally,
this is 7 months.
Yeah, this will either be lackluster news or bad news. Next March or April, you'll be able to get Ice Cream Sandwich on your Sony phone. So just don't hold your breath, and it's good news.
Let's move on to the voicemails.
Incoming message.
First incoming message is a voicemail, and it comes from Preston, who ponders the implications of the Super Bowl streaming live for free online.
Hey crew, this is Preston in Silicon Valley. I was just calling on your quick comments about the Super Bowl being streamed for the first time this year. I was actually wondering if this is going to be the turning point for networks actually realizing that they can make money online. We all know that the porn industry leads the way when it comes to Betamax versus VHS or Blu-ray versus HD DVD. I'm just wondering if sports leads the way when it comes to online advertising. So this could be actually a big deal. Just wanted to know your thoughts. Thanks. Bye.
Well, I think there's not really any other best case scenario than the Super Bowl, if all goes well, because it's the biggest sporting event of the year. Certainly for advertising, by far.
Yeah, that and other leagues have put their stuff online, but it's the NFL. When they do anything that's different, they seem like they're the slowest. I mean, this year they allowed their direct TV ticket thing to be on the PlayStation 3, and that was big news. The fact that they're putting their stuff on NBC streaming, that was a big deal as well. The Super Bowl, even bigger, because the thing is, NFL rights are so expensive that networks will just change lineups, move shows, fire people just to get the NFL. So if the NFL thinks it's going to make them money, they're probably right.
A lot of people had the reaction to this, well, it's on over the air for free. Why wouldn't they put it online for free? But that has been the issue up to now. That makes perfect sense if you're thinking that.
Should do it.
But nothing that is over the air for free is put online for free, almost ever. That's the biggest problem. I mean, look at Hulu. Look at all of those shows that are delayed 8 to 28 days. Those are free over the air. They're from the broadcast networks, Fox, ABC, NBC. So putting the Super Bowl online for free, live, is pretty huge. I don't know enough about how this deal is been struck to know whether it has a knock-on effect or not, whether it's just kind of a gimmick to get people to talk about the fact that NBC has it this year, or whether they charged people, which they charge outrageous rates for the Super Bowl, whether they were able to say, look, you're also going to get your message in front of an online audience. And so many people look at these advertisements online, there's going to be an audience there, and we're going to charge you, an incremental amount for that. Tim, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I'm not sure that this is necessarily going to be a moneymaker for NBC or for Verizon, for that matter. I do think it's more of an attempt to make a story, and I think it's also an attempt for NBC to kind of put their toe in the water and see how this works, see whether indeed they can get a big enough market for them to make this worthwhile going down the road. But we have seen some major events online, like the Masters in golf. Every year has been online for I think the past 3 years now, and it's been very good coverage on there and very well done. So I'm curious to see if we get some additional coverage and some better coverage online of major NFL sporting events down the line. But right now, no, I don't think it's going to be a major moneymaker for them, at least for this year.
Let's move on to the email. Brian Smith writes in and says, on the idea of accessing a website on a shared server via the IP address and a subdirectory name, that only works if that's how the administrator of the server organizes things, which is the one hosting Subbrilliant.com in my example yesterday apparently does. I use virtual hosting on my own server, and while a couple of the sites might be based on subdirectories of others, there's no common parent directory for all of them. To guarantee success with all possible server configurations, using a hosts file or plugin as an alternate or supplement to DNS is still the best way. Yeah, thanks, Brian. A few people, good sysadmins out there, wrote in and pointed out that I was wrong in saying that that is the way it can always work. I think it's still true that there's always a way to get to a domain, even if it doesn't have its domain name. It's just, Brian's absolutely right. It's going to work differently based on different hosts. And the way I described it yesterday is actually an oversimplification of the way it works on my host. But there is a URL that I can use to get to my site, even if my domain name is not working.
Got another email from Sean Wyatt in Greenville, North Carolina. He says, I'm a chemist. I love building computers, PC gaming, technology. I watch the show as much as I can during my lunch breaks on my iPad Touch. Thank you, Sean. I enjoy the discussion. As much as I love all things tech, I can't submit to purchasing a smartphone just yet. Yearly cost for a device like that is really mind-blowing. I could purchase and throw away a new PC gaming system every year for the same cost of a new iPhone and associated charges. With this in mind, I've noticed a bit of a trend in the technology show turning into more of a phone show. Seems like nearly half of the show sometimes is devoted to phone company X and who bought who and what new Android's coming out. Don't get me wrong, this information fits into the show. It's just that there has to be other tech news out there. Would it hurt to have one phone-free day per week? Perhaps phone-free Fridays at TNT. Lately, it feels a little bit like phone news today. PNT. On a side note, I love the new commercials using the sponsors' products. Both the printer and forward work is great. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, Sean, no, I'm glad we have Tim on because I'm sure you faced the same issue as phones have risen. I mean, I remember 5 years ago, phones were kind of a side note, and now they are the dominant coverage.
Yeah, I was going to say we actually get some similar feedback from time to time from users who are just kind of sick of all the phone news. I mean, we're lucky we have ways that we can tell users how to exclude certain posts if they don't want any phone posts at all in a gadget. They can exclude those if they want to. Yeah, I think that we're seeing the most interesting innovation right now happening in the phone and the tablet space. And since tablets are still relatively niche compared to phones, yeah, there's simply a lot of things to talk about for phones, and they're kind of taking over the industry, at least from a news perspective. So I don't really know what to say there. I know that we have raised the bar in terms of what we cover from phones. There were a lot of phones that we used to cover, feature phones and that kind of thing that we simply won't give the time of day to anymore. I hate to say it, but it's kind of the way the industry is going. That's where the most interesting stuff is happening. So we kind of have to write about it. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, and same for us. I mean, you can fast forward through the phone stories if they're really bothering you, but phones are popular.
Yeah, I mean, they've taken the space of the personal computer. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, people are carrying these around all the time, and there's all kinds of. I mean, what's the biggest innovation in laptops lately? Ultrabooks. We made them thinner. Yeah. It's like that's really
faster processors and stuff like that.
But yeah, but that's the thing. The quad cores are going to tablets and phones. That's even more intriguing.
I think what Sean is hitting on is that there's always going to be a topic you're not as interested in that is really popular with everyone else. And it's going to drive you crazy. And it happens to me when I listen to other shows. We get these same sort of emails about Apple, about Google, about Facebook,
patent wars.
about patent wars, about SOPA recently. One guy said, please, SOPA just depresses me. Stop covering it.
SOPA depresses me too, by the way, Guy. Yeah. I am with you.
I'm with you too.
We have to talk about it, though.
But that's the thing is we want to talk about the thing that the majority of the audience is interested in, or people aren't going to watch us at all. And we have to cover certain things because it would be wrong. I mean, if we just randomly said, well, we're not going to cover phones on Friday, and then there's a huge breaking story that involves phones on a Friday, that would be wrong for us to be like, nope, we have a policy. So anyway, Sean, I get what you're saying. I don't want you to think we're not listening to you, but I thought this is a good example of, being able to explain the way we try to balance the coverage, and it's going to go in waves too. Something like SOPA is going to come along, and it's going to keep making news for a while, and then it's going to disappear. When I started doing Buzz Out Loud in 2005, we constantly had people complaining about Microsoft stories. We don't get that complaint these days.
People used to complain about netbook stories at all the time. And
absolutely.
We don't have to worry about that anymore, obviously.
Stop covering MP3 players all the time. we get that.
Also, Linux was a big thing in the day of BOL.
There was a big stretch where Linux was, and Linux has always been bubbling under, and it's still worth covering. But there was a time when it just, for some reason, it was in the news every day for a while. Yeah.
Totally.
So our last email, Michael McLennan, PhD from Purdue University, writes in, hey, Demolition Team. I know how much Tom loves graphene sheets and carbon nanotubes. Here's your opportunity to learn the underlying quantum physics. Nanohub.org, an online community of nanotechnology researchers and educators, is offering 2 5-week courses starting in January 2012. They're taught at a level that anyone can understand as long as you know a little calculus. Similar lectures are already available at nanohub.org, but the course adds homework, tests, and the ability to ask ask questions in an online forum, all for just $30. Check out the video and get your nano freak on. Love the show.
This is really cool. I love this idea of a
We
resource
knew you
like
would.
that. And well, because I wrote "this rocks" next to the email, but in our rundown. Plus, he calls us demolition team. I kind of like that. But I love it when
this sounds awesome. This is the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that I wish I had more time for, because I would totally subscribe for this for $30.
Oh yeah, it's. I mean, this is the kind of thing you're paying high-level tuition to get in college, and this is kind of what the internet's all about in a certain way. And I love that we have a PhD at Purdue. Go Boilermakers in the audience. Big Ten for the win.
Oh.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Don't forget to submit stories and vote them up or down at technewstoday.reddit.com. We had somebody in the chat room who's like, technews.reddit.com is really dead. I'm like, no, it's technewstoday.reddit.com is ours. That's where you go. Submit stories and vote for stories up and down. Helps us decide what to cover each day on the show. Tim Stevens, great to have you along again today. Let folks know what's up at Engadget. I noticed there was an update to my distro app recently.
Yeah, we just launched distro in Newsstand on iOS, so now you can get updates pushed automatically to your tablet. We also launched distro on Android devices today. So if you have an Android tablet, you can now get our tablet magazine on your device, which is pretty exciting. But other than that, we're pretty much in full speed ahead mode for CES. It's going to be our biggest show ever, and it's pretty exhausting leading up to the show, but we're really looking forward to it. So that's just a couple weeks away.
Yeah, we know exactly how you feel. We'll see. We'll see you there.
I imagine, absolutely.
That's it for this episode of Tech News Today. You can find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Our email address is tnt@twit.tv, or give us a call. Leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 260-TNT-SHOW. MG Sigler joins us tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Hey, Iyaz.
All right, can you do the crushing your head thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there you go.
Quit your head. I have all the power.